Hi, beautiful souls. Today we're going to talk about something that all of us have ingrained within us, and that is shame. Where did it come from? Why is it here? What are we doing with it? What are we doing about it? So let's talk about that. So if you guys are on your healing journey, you know the importance of working with shame. Shame is the lowest frequency, just above death. And so when we can stay at that frequency, we can be easily manipulated, easily pushed to a certain agenda, because we are basically dead. We're really not living our full truth. And so shame is ingrained in many different areas. And what is the biggest place that we see shame projected in? The church. The church. The church does a really good job of projecting shame into our reality. Why is that? To keep us programmed, to keep us manipulated to an agenda that keeps us dumb, keeps us, limited to a lot of our potential. And as we know that we are just expressions of God consciousness in physical form, we know that we are much more than that. We know that. So if you're on your spiritual journey, you're on your healing journey, you have already accepted that part of you. But let's go and talk about where the first level of shame came into the picture. We have to go all the way back to Adam and Eve. But we actually have to go all the way back to Adam and Lilith. If you guys don't know who Lilith is, let me give you a quick little rundown. So, Lilith was created of the earth, similar to Adam. Adam was created, God was like, you need another counterpart to do the stuff you can't do, basically, and just to have company. So then God made Lilith from the earth, just the same as Adam from the earth, and Lilith was created, and they had their own separate areas and all of that stuff. And then Adam wanted Lilith to be under her, wanted her to submit to him. And Lilith was like, hell no, I ain't submitting to you. So she left the garden on her own. She didn't get kicked out or anything. She was like, I don't want to be in this paradigm. This one is not for me. I'm all here for equality. I'm here to be one with you. I'm here to see you eye to eye, not above and below. And so Lilith left, and then she became demonized, and there's a whole radical story of Lilith's story. And then Adam now needs a counterpart again. So then Eve was created out of the rib of Adam, which instantly is in the energy of submission because it's created from Adam. So Eve then inherently became a very submissive, feminine woman. And you can see that in the garden when she submitted to the snake or the serpent, or which could be Lilith in snake form. So we can see then later, if you look into other texts as well, then Eve submitted many other times, and it created a lot of issues. And so then this is where, right after Eve ate that apple from the serpent, then instantly she shared this with Adam, and then they became ashamed. They looked down and they realized, I don't have clothes on. I should be ashamed of myself. This is where shame came in. And when you separate yourself from your own divinity and your own body, the wind is confirming this. I don't think you guys can hear it, but boy, it's blowing. When you are ashamed of your own body, then you're going to be ashamed of the pleasure of your body. You're going to be ashamed of any good thing that comes out of you. So then we start to be programmed, specifically as women, to be ashamed of our body, to be ashamed of pleasure, to be ashamed of knowledge and wisdom. That starts from the Garden of Eden. So it's so interesting to look back on this and be like, wow, this has been ingrained in us for generations and generations and millennia. Because I have a theory, and I'm going to share it with you guys, that Lilith was actually the serpent that came to Eve to share with her that she is also fit within the matrix and she could leave if she wanted to. But Eve is a submissive wife, so she doesn't leave. We could go into the story of Lilith, and she was a warrior. She is someone that doesn't want to fit into a box. She doesn't want to be stereotyped. She doesn't want to fit into an agenda. And so she's now known kind of to be a demoness. She's one to fit outside of the paradigm of the matrix. And isn't that interesting that when you speak up against yourself and when you say, you know what, I want equality, then you become a demoness. You become demonic in nature. So now is our opportunity to go back to the garden and Okay, so we actually do have to talk about Lilith more, because my theory of Lilith being the serpent has relevancy here. Because Lilith then wanted to share this knowledge that she had outside of the matrix with Eve. And she was like, here's an apple, and this apple is going to give you the knowledge that you don't already have to be outside of the matrix, to be outside of the garden. And so then Eve ate that apple and gave it to Adam. Adam also ate that apple, right? Let's remember that Adam also gave in, okay? Let's not put all the blame on Eve. Adam also gave in. But also, the reason that Eve submitted to the serpent was because Adam wanted submission, okay? So Adam basically created this whole paradigm. We don't talk about Adam enough, I don't think. I don't think we talk about the deception and the harm that Adam placed in the beginning of the paradigm by wanting power and control. And Lilith said no. Anyways, so I believe that Lilith wanted Eve to understand what power she was losing by fitting within this paradigm, by fitting into Adam's control. And so then Lilith became a story, a hope story for many. She became a hope story for many because she said, I don't want to submit, I want equality, which is really quite beautiful. And I actually do believe that Lilith came back and taught Eve pleasure. Because think about it. If Eve is meant to submit, if that is her goal, is to be a submissive wife, then she's not going to learn pleasure about herself. She's only going to learn the pleasure of man. And we've seen this through countless millennia and generations, that the pleasure of woman wasn't even like a thing until recently. I think it was like in the 60s or the 40s or the 50s, sometime around the 1900s, that we actually learned the anatomy of the clitoris. Is that insane? We've had women since the beginning of time, but up until 100 years, less than 100 years ago, we found out what the anatomy of the clitoris is. If that doesn't speak truth to the fact that women were created to submit, or that paradigm of women were created to submit, I don't know what does, right? So then Lilith comes in as this teacher of pleasure, saying it's actually okay to find pleasure within life. It's okay to find pleasure within your sexual relationships. It's okay for a woman to want things. It's okay for a woman to stand up. And so Lilith, being created in this paradigm, became a big teacher to a lot of people. And if you're in a moment of death and rebirth, a moment of crossroads between an old life and a new life, Lilith might be coming in for you, as well as Hecate, which is a similar energy, which I believe that Hecate is also channeling in with Lilith. Right now is the rise of the neglected goddess, the rise of the neglected feminine, the suppressed feminine, the wounded warrior. And so we're seeing these energies come about and being very relevant because we're realizing that our power for so long was taken away from the beginning of time. But I don't believe that this was a mistake, right? I think that God has deep intention. I don't think Lilith was a mistake at all. I don't think Lilith was a mistake. I think Lilith was an empowering person that showed us the duality of light and dark and the ability to see beyond the paradigm of having to fit within just the light, right? Lilith is a teacher that teaches us the beauty of both the dark feminine and the light feminine, that she can hold capacity to empower herself by empowering others and all of that stuff. It's very, very beautiful, the story of Lilith. And yet, if you still do research on it, you're going to see all of this talk of her being a demoness and being married to Satan and all of this stuff. But it makes you think, okay, what about duality? The duality of light and dark. I have heard countless messages and pastors preaching about the light and the dark, actually, and showing that God will bring in trials. God will bring in trials that push you to go into the light. Is that not then God working with the darkness to push you into the light? Right? Wouldn't that make sense? Anyways, back to the story. So now we're in this era of being able to go back and address our shame. Go back and address the fact that we are ashamed of our body from the beginning of time. from the wind is confirming this right now. The wind is saying, girl, it is our time to address shame. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Thank you, beautiful wind spirit. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you, God. Energy all around me. Thank you, trees that are supporting this conversation. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Light and dark working together. The beauty of trees, right? The brown color. Brown is a combination of all colors mixed into one. So I believe that if we had a higher capacity to see light and a higher capacity to see color, that we would see that the brown colors of trees are actually a ton of different colors mixed together. We have greens, reds, purples, blues, oranges, all of them within trees that we can't see yet because we haven't hit that level of light. But that's a different conversation that we can have. We have to go back to forgiving ourselves for eating from the apple, but at the same time, potentially appreciate ourselves for eating of the apple, to receive different types of wisdom, to see beyond the veil of our own suppression and our own submission, Ashe. And so as we go back to the story, we're going to rewrite the way that we look at it. We no longer have to be ashamed for being Eve. We no longer have to be ashamed for being a feminine energy because we have such power in that. Being a witch is known to be a wise woman. That is what that is. And Lilith also being known as a screeching owl, known to be the night owl, also known for wisdom, the wisdom of darkness. And as we continue to understand duality, the yin and the yang, the counterbalance of all things, the dance of light and dark, we get to see that that dance doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it can rather be an empowering thing that pushes us forward to understand all parts of ourselves. When we're afraid of darkness, when we're afraid of the shadow, when we're afraid of the dark side of life, we're afraid of ourselves because each of us have a shadow to our light. Each of us has a shadow part of us, the part of us that we need to do some deep digging into, which is why it's important for us to be okay with looking at the darkness. If we're afraid of darkness, then we're afraid of ourselves inherently, and we're not accepting every single part of us because we are both the light and the dark, the yin and the yang, the up and the down. We have all of that within us. There is such beauty in the complexity of it all. And if we just submit ourselves to only being light, or only being love, right? We're missing a whole category of the other side of us, which is that darker side, the deep feminine, the sensual part of us, right? And it doesn't have to be bad. We don't have to worship that part. That's not necessarily the intention, but there is a push. The dark side works with the light. Ashe, validation, thank you. And at the gates of heaven, there are demons. Why is that? Because demons work with the light. At the gates of heaven, it keeps the darkness out. The darkness works with light, and we see that at the beginning of time with the story of Lilith and Eve. So let's come together instead of demonizing the story of the feminine, but rather appreciating the story of the feminine and appreciating the complexity of the feminine. And this is also not to push away Adam or the story of the masculine, and that's a totally different conversation that we'll have to have at some other point. But this is the story of the start of the feminine. So how can we see this story in a different light now? And how can we appreciate the complexity of both Lilith and Eve and the paradigm that was created in the garden? And what can we do now to make a new paradigm, to create the new world? That's where we're at. Everyone knows it. We're at the revelation point. We're at the turning point of creating the new earth. So how are we going to take radical accountability of the shame in our life to allow us to rise up, the rising phoenix, to see all parts of ourselves, no longer isolated to the shame complex that is keeping us down and manipulated, but rather coming into the power of our godliness, the beautiful dance of light and dark, the beautiful dance between the spiritual and the physical, the beautiful dance between the masculine and the feminine. There is such beauty in duality. So why are we keeping us restricted to one certain mentality? Okay, so that is food for thought today. I hope you guys enjoyed that message. Please leave in the comments if you have anything that you want to counter argue on these topics. I love to chew on thoughts and play devil's advocate a little bit. So please put in the comments any thoughts that you have on this. So thank you so much for listening. And again, this is just my personal perspective. I love you all and have a great rest of your day. Mwah!